Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Madisonville Marine. There is no better place to buy a boat than Madisonville Marine. And there are 3 ways to do it. You can visit them on Highway 411 North in Madisonville. You can check them out at madmarine.com, which you see on your screen. Or you can check out the Downtown Knoxville Boat Show when they bring all kinds of boats right up here to Knoxville. And that will be just about a month from now. So Downtown Knoxville Boat Show, be on the lookout for that. Madisonville Marine, Joe Special and his team will bring a ton of boats up here for that. Okay, let's welcome in the last 2 members of today's panel right over here. We have former Virginia Tech defensive coordinator, former NFL player, former Virginia Tech player, and Vol fan, Justin Hamilton. Justin, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, John.
Right here, David Ubben from The Athletic. I don't do this to benefit you, but I swear there's no subscription service that I use more than The Athletic. I'm going to steal from them a little later in the show, too. So, David Ubben, people can check your stuff out there as well.
Appreciate it.
All right. Let's take a look at some of Ryan Callahan's people's work. This is 247sports.com. The recruiting rankings for the year. Now, this has the top 100 recruits by school. And you see that Alabama got a blue million, Georgia got a ton, Texas. Tennessee in that mix with some of the top 100 guys that they brought in.
This is also Fox's work.
Also college football, yes, Fox College Football. I was going to try and ignore that, give them a plug. But anyway, they took the numbers from 24/7.
They did.
And then let's take a look at SEC recruiting numbers here. These are 24/7 as well. You at home can see these a little easier than we can in the studio with our small monitors. But 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars down the line. My question, Ryan, very quickly. Is Tennessee gaining in terms of talent? We've discussed this many times that so far it hasn't looked like, well, what we saw this year when all the Pistons were flying with Hendon Hooker, with Jalen Hyatt, et cetera, you could win with lesser talent. And maybe you continue to do that. I like Heupel in the system. But the question is, you're going to need some talent to catch up a little bit. Are they gaining, or is it too soon to be gaining on the big boys like Georgia and Alabama?
Well, they're gaining, but you have to put it in perspective because it obviously starts at the top there with Alabama and Georgia and what those teams continue to do talent-wise. Alabama just signed one of its best classes ever. So you're not catching them per se, but you are closing the gap because you're improving your roster. So I think Tennessee is improving enough. They're chasing down those teams, putting themselves more in that discussion. Finishing 4th in the SEC, you're usually doing really well in recruiting. So I think that tells the story more. To finish 4th in the SEC. If you keep doing that on a yearly basis, stacking top 10 classes, you've got a chance to compete for a national title.
Bob, you agree? You think they're gaining?
Yeah.
Are they gaining enough for your liking?
In a little bit of a different way, though. I think they're gaining because of the coaching staff. I've liked over 2 years what the coaching staff has done. They've done more with less. And so, yeah, I think they're gaining. But in the end, you know, Alabama and Georgia, even though Tennessee beat Alabama last year, you just sit there and you look at that gap and you say, okay, by the time you play Alabama in October, you're going to have lost 3 starters. So now you're down to probably a lesser talented individual, whereas Alabama seemingly loses 3 starters and they replace them with 3 guys that are going to go in the top 60 picks in the NFL draft. So I think you're gaining, but there's some stuff underneath that you still got to fill in those gaps.
I think the hard part is there's like a caste system in recruiting, in that, you know, the gap between 1 to 5 is not that far, and then the gap from 1 to 10 is gigantic. And then you have that second gap that when you get to like 11 to 30, it's not as big, but you're still sitting there in kind of that third class where you've got to kind of bump your way up, and Tennessee's kind of crawling up through that third class, and you want to get into that where you look at the talent composite and you're sitting in the top 10. That's when you're kind of within striking distance a little bit, I think.
Justin, I know you're not big on talking recruiting. Do you want to add something, or do you want to move on to the next question?
We can move on. I think everybody said it.
All right. I know you don't like talking the recruiting rankings. All right. Let's talk about the fact that Tennessee promoted Alec Ablin as the new tight ends coach. Rather than going outside, they didn't interview some folks outside, of course. I think there are a lot of Vol fans who look at that and say, well, you could have gotten a known recruiter, a guy with a proven track record. Instead, Josh Heupel did what he did last year, and it worked with Kelsey Pope when he put him in, replacing Cody Burns, the wide receiver position. He took a guy who was an offensive analyst last year, worked with the offensive line. It's a guy he's known since UCF, and he said, I'm pushing you in here. Would you feel more comfortable? You've been on the coaching staff. You know what those analysts do. Would you feel more comfortable if he'd gone outside, or do you say, no, just tell the folks at home to calm down, that you know this guy, trust him to put him in there? Which way are you looking at it?
I get the argument or the disagreement or whatever, but I am totally in favor of the promotion from within because he's been a part of all the recruiting, all the on-campus recruiting. The only thing he hasn't done is go out and put boots in the ground. He's there for the official visits. He's there for the unofficial visits. He's on the Zooms. He's walking around with parents or with families and with prospects all throughout the on-campus recruiting. The only difference is going out and talking to high school coaches, junior college coaches, which he's done from his desk over the phone. And he's been a part of what do we want, what's been successful for us, and how do we need to move going forward. So I think it's a good move.
I think you look back at the previous coaching staff who took guys who had never coached a position before and they put them in that position. I can't think of his name. It had something to do with Chick-fil-A bags.
Yeah.
But I think that kind of makes people
Niedermeyer
leery.
on it.
Yeah. I think people get leery because of what they've seen happen before. I trust this staff and their moves where the previous staff kind of looked like they were doing it for reasons other than this will make us a better football team.
Well, good point. We need to be quick.
You have to balance the continuity. I'm a big continuity guy. Continuity versus getting stale. I think right now they're leaning on continuity and it's paying off. You just have to watch for it.
And I think Josh Heupel thinks staff chemistry is one of the things working in their favor the most. Why shake things up and bring in an outside guy you're not sure about when you've got someone internally that you clearly believe in and think can do the job? The only weird part about this to me was you could have put Alec Ablin on the road when they had an open spot on the staff for 2 months. And he didn't. Well, not that you could have promoted him weeks ago. They have an open spot. They sent someone else on the road instead of him to replace Alex Skolich. That was a little odd to me if he was going to get the job.
Right. Justin, did I hear you want to say
The
something
Power
else?
T logo makes people a better recruiter. I was a much better recruiter when I had a VT on my chest as opposed to a Virginia Military Institute logo on my chest.
Very good. When we come back, Texas and Oklahoma won't arrive until 2025. Is that good news or bad news for Tennessee? And you know how many top quarterbacks are transferring? It's unbelievable. The numbers next. Going back on the Sports Source.